Good evening and welcome to this week's edition of Beyond the Politics, our examination of the events happening right here in the Quinte region and the people working so hard behind the scenes to make it happen. I'm your host, Paul Martin. Joining me, my regular co-host, regular columnist for the Belleville Intelligencer, Colin Mackay.
Thanks, Paul.
And our very special guest this week, Belleville Councillor and Conservative candidate in the Bay of Quinte riding, Ryan Williams.
Good evening. Nice to be here.
Let's get right into it. Normally, we talk about current business and then future business, but you, of course, have two distinct spheres. So we're going to start with council business, and then we'll talk about things as a newly minted Conservative candidate in our second segment.
Sounds good.
So there's been a certain amount of attention on council over the past few months over a vacant council seat. Of course, this was the seat that was left vacant by the untimely passing of Pat Culhane last fall. And eventually, the appointment of Tyler Alsop. So let's talk about that. You were embroiled in that process for 10 weeks, almost 3 months. What can you say about how you felt the process evolved?
Well, we're happy with the outcome, right? I think Tyler's happy with it. Council is back whole, and I think a lot of the public were happy with how it turned out. I think obviously the side that I was on was with the three other councillors at the beginning. Councillor Carr and Councillor Millette and Councillor Thompson, was that democracy should play the only role when it comes to selecting someone who sits around the horseshoe. We're accountable only to the taxpayer, and those taxpayers should have the only say of who we are and what the makeup are around that horseshoe. So at the end of the day, that process did play out. That was the democratic process that did play out itself, hearing from the people and the media went around it. But I think the public were loud and clear. It always should be next in line where able, and to the point where we thought at the end of it that perhaps there should be something, even a municipal act that spells it out a little bit cleaner, clearer. Perhaps that unless someone is unable to serve, or you have certain mechanisms that can't be filled, that next in line doesn't work out, that then a by-election should be the only other answer.
So Ryan, are you thinking of actually maybe a bylaw perhaps, just to make it very specific for this type of thing?
I think it's greater than a bylaw. It would have to be probably a municipal act change. Typically, if that were to occur, we would in some part of the meeting make a resolution that would go to AMO perhaps, and that's something that could be debated there.
An AMO is?
With the
municipal.
The municipal.
Whatever it is.
Association of Municipalities of Ontario. There you go.
So like the 444.
Isn't that government speak? You always hear acronyms.
Well,
what is that? Yeah.
The only reason I mention is because not everybody's going to know AMO.
That's right. So AMO is one side, another one's ROMA, so another Rural Ontario Municipality Association. And that's, we actually, through, and these are the things that the public don't know, we go to these associations and we actually elect councillors to sit in roles in those associations, and their whole goal is to listen to municipalities and then bring such changes forward. I know we're talking about it probably next or coming up, but another one that came forth this week for groups of people looking for input was on the Integrity Commissioner, the whole process. So, as politicians, there's things that obviously not everything is perfect. That's why we're there, but that's also what we look through municipalities. And the point of working with other municipalities is to say what is working, what isn't, what changes can we make, perhaps the municipal act, and we can go from there.
So what did we learn from this? And one of the things that was brought up was the whole concept of inclusion. How do we work on inclusion moving forward?
Well, the biggest issue, and I know that Councillor Sean Kelly brought this up, was we want more inclusion, obviously, but it has to be the people that vote that in. So at the end of the day, it really comes to the question is, how do we get more people to run for municipal politics? And so part of the process we talked about was removing barriers that exist for individuals to get involved in politics. So anyone listening today, or anyone that's out there, why aren't you running for municipal politics, or what's stopping you from being part of this whole process?
So could one of them perhaps be that city council has their meetings at 4:00, so a lot of people say that's very difficult. Could you change that? Would that open up?
Yeah, Quinte West meets at 7, so we thought that's something that could happen in Belleville. A lot of people work till then. Would they be able to get out of their jobs? Certainly that's one. Second is probably, I think, just some education of what the job entails to be a municipal councillor. It is, I'll say it's more intimidating when you're outside of it, and certainly the first month is difficult. You're really drinking from a fire hose to really learn.
A bit overwhelmed?
But overwhelmed. But once you get in, I can speak after 2 years, maybe I've had a better education than some, but you really get a grasp of it. And I'll tell you, it is very rewarding to be a municipal councillor. And I think what we don't want to hear that people aren't running for that because of some barrier that exists. And I think, going back to your question, I think what we're trying to do next, and we'll talk about the electronic and telephone voting, but part of that is also looking at some work to look at all aspects of what's stopping people from getting in. So the time is one. Sometimes I believe too, sometimes I think municipal councillors, are they paid enough, right? If someone is, this is a $1 billion corporation, the city of Belleville. The assets that are involved, the budgets that we look at, at the end of the day, we should be able to attract the right talent. And maybe some of that is paying municipal councillors a little bit more to ensure that we get the proper people. And sometimes, and to the original point, it's going to be the barriers that exist.
Would you ever see them paying for committee work? Or is that just sort of part of, encompasses the whole thing?
It could be. I think the council roles themselves, councillors come in to obviously run council, but then, as you've said, there's committee work. There's a lot of committees that we sit on, and there's a lot of work to do. It's not really a part-time job anymore. Some weeks it is 30, 40 hours. Some weeks it's less. But it's really important. And if we want that kind of caliber here, we should be looking at, what are we paying, the time that we're starting these council meetings, the committee work itself, when they're happening. And perhaps through COVID, we've learned that, we can do some meetings on Zoom. And it makes things a little bit more accessible. It's not the best way to run things all the time, I'll admit. The joke this year was the one Christmas ornament everyone got for 2020 was, I think you're on mute, which was, that's every single Zoom meeting you hear that line.
So could you see a hybrid, a mixture of coming in every other council?
Yeah, and some weeks we've done that. We had last month we had one meeting, and it was 6-7 hour meeting by the time we had finished in camera. I don't know. I think some of that is there's the business city has to go on. But, do I say right now we don't have a great mix of councillors? No, we have a great mix of councillors. We do have a lot of great talents. It's great to have the Thurlow, the 2 seats on Thurlow, which is really important. And then the ward in Belleville. I know there's been talk also behind the scenes about looking at the ward system again. Would you go to 3 people for one ward, or would you get rid of it? I think it is great the way it is because of the size of the city we are and the people that are at the table. I think 9 is a good number for council. But there's a lot of different things. And I think the point is in democracy, you always can look at every system and make it better, and you have the right to challenge it. And I think the biggest part of it is we want everyone who wants to run to be able to get in. And when we look at, inclusion, and we're looking at getting more people involved, I think it really comes down to allowing the opportunity for more people to run. And I think, we have different ways that people can get out there, but I think the more people that run, the better chance people have to get in.
Let's go on to that then. Let's talk about the electronic voting. Because as you said, and we talked about this before, but a 43% turnout. And turnout for municipal elections is consistently lower than provincial and federal, but Belleville's number has been even lower than some surrounding municipalities, and consistently. I remember one year Brighton got up 60%, and we've never approached that level. Would electronic voting and telephone voting, do you think, help increase those numbers?
Yes, I believe so. I also think it depends on how contentious the election will be, and I believe because of the vacant seat issue, I believe there's going to be a lot more people that run in this election coming up. I think that's really great. And, the electronic voting, I brought that forward when, just as an option, we might look at it as a by-election around Councillor Alsop at the time before he was elected or appointed. And at that time, we looked at what other municipalities and what other provinces are doing. I just come out of a nomination for the Bay Quinte Conservatives. It was all through COVID electronic. Mm-hmm. There was some pitfalls to it, some positives. But in speaking to the company that ran that, they actually ran all of Nova Scotia's elections that just happened in October. So reaching out to some of those councillors in Cape Breton, they had just completed that election. It was telephone and online only, and they couldn't be happier. Their turnout was 63%, from 53% the election prior. So they already had a turnout that was greater.
So it would be both telephone and are we talking landlines?
Yes, landline or cell phone or online. And so the key to me is telephone. We did online in the last election. It was only the advanced polls, but we did it 10 days prior to the election, and it stopped, I think, a day or two before election day. And the difference with this one is this company, if we did an RFP and a company was hired, they send a registered letter to every electorate through, and they get that through Impact. So you would receive, Mr. Mackay, a letter in the mail that would say,
And I'd have a PIN number on it?
you'd have a PIN number on it. And how they verify that, so someone couldn't take your letter and go vote for you, is when you call to vote, they say, we're going to verify your identity and it's only your date of birth.
Okay, I'm going to push back from the older people are going to say, look, I like my paper ballot. I want to go to, that's the way I've always done it. How are you going to convince somebody
So-
that's going to spew?
So you'll still have your
Not
poll
spew, but
station.
believe that.
You still have your polling station. You'd still arrive, let's say it was at Centennial or somewhere else in
So
the city.
would you have fewer polling stations?
Yes,
then?
we'd have maybe one in Thurlow, one in Belleville, and you'd show up, but it would be in a tablet with a stylus. So you wouldn't be voting on your paper; it would still be on your tablet, but people would walk you through it. And hey, I mean, those that would push back and say, "I still want the paper; I don't trust it." We bank online.
Oh,
we trust our trading online. Our currency is all controlled on. Everything is online.
Everything's moving to
That's
electronics.
right. I mean, I challenge anyone who says I don't use a teller or an automatic teller. I don't. Everything is there. My question, my big thing is that the telephone voting is really important because I still feel that some people find that online voting is a little cumbersome, even though it's pretty easy. But of those that want to, you pick up the phone, you enter your PIN number, and you still get your choices, and it's really easy to do. So the telephone to me, and here's the biggest thing. So the benefits to online and telephone voting over election day. You can do it 2 weeks prior to, so they're normally 2 weeks prior to the election day. You'll get your ballots and you can vote anytime before that 2 weeks.
I could
So
vote
you
at
can
2
do it on a
o'clock in the
Tuesday.
morning?
You can do it 2 in the morning on a Sunday while eating your breakfast.
So it's on my convenience doing it this way.
Yes. Anyone, you don't have to leave your house. So people who would say, look, it's, the weather's bad. Normally October it's pretty good, but let's say we had a snowstorm or something happen. You have, the ability to have anyone in the household be educated by it. And so when we send a letter to the house, you're also able to educate people on this is the process, exercise your right to vote, and here's how you do that.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Ryan. This has been Beyond the Politics with Ryan Williams.